Lesson, and today we're going to be looking at specialised cells. First part of the lesson, we're going to look at a recap and see what you've learned so far about general animal and plant cells, and then we'll go on and we'll look at specialised cells. We have 3 specialised cells to look at in this part of the topic. We're going to look at sperm and egg cells today, and then in tomorrow's lesson we'll look at a ciliated epithelial cell. In today's lesson, it'd be handy if you've got a pen or a paper or a whiteboard or something you can write on as we go through the lesson, because I am going to be pausing it and asking you to write down your ideas, and then you can check them on the next part of the video. So if you want to pause now and grab yourself a pen and paper or a whiteboard pen and a whiteboard, that's fine. You might want to draw on your screen, whatever, but it would be really handy if you did stop, pause and try the activities, because that will really test your own understanding as to whether you've got the idea or not. Okay, so starting off with, we have looked at 2 cells, a plant cell and an animal cell. So what you should be able to do is write down the different organelles that are found in an animal cell and the different organelles that are found in a plant cell. So if you just want to pause the video now and try and write down those organelles, and then I will show you a slide with all of them on and we can talk through them. So if you pause now and have a go at that. So, looking at those different organelles, if we go through, the way I've grouped these together is showing the basic ones that we've learnt since year 7, the new ones we've learnt for GCSE, and then for the plant cell, the 3 organelles that a plant cell has additionally. So you should all have got a nucleus. I'd expect everyone to have got that spot on. Cell membrane, again, would have thought most of you got that, because I've been talking about that since year 7, and the same for cytoplasm. Then we get the 2 new ones, the ribosomes and the mitochondria. Both animal and plant cells have those, and the reason why they have them is to do with their function, which we'll have a look at on the next slide. Additional organelles that are found inside a plant cell are chloroplasts, cell wall, and sap vacuole. Now, looking at their function, the next thing I want you to try and be able to do is just next to those words, write down 1 word or 2 words or a short sentence saying what the main function or the main job of that organelle is. So you write down nucleus and then a word next to it to explain what its job is. So if you pause the video now and have a go at that. So I've prepared a slide with that on, and we'll go through each one. Now, in an exam, you would be expected to write a full sentence stating the function of each organelle. I find for our memory, it's key, or it's handy just to have 1 word to be able to latch onto, or 2 words to be able to latch onto. So you'll have seen this in the work that I marked for you from last week. Whenever we're talking about the nucleus, whether it's plant or animal cell, it controls the cell function and it contains the DNA, or the genetic material. The cell membrane allows substances in and out of the cell. Oxygen, water, carbon dioxide, and the list goes on. Cytoplasm is the jelly inside the cell, and that's where the chemical reactions of the cell happen. Now those 3 we've been doing since year 7. The next one's the ribosomes. The ribosomes are where proteins are made. So these are needed in animal cells and in plant cells. So ribosomes, key word is protein. If you remember the word protein, synthesis just means to make. So you could say proteins are made here. But if you can remember the word synthesis, that's even better. Mitochondria. Mitochondria are where energy is made, or energy is released by the process of respiration. So if you can get those words in your answer, you're making sure you're getting a really high quality response to the question. The plant cell has 3 specific additional organelles. It has the chloroplasts, which absorb light for photosynthesis, the cell wall, which provides structure and support to the cell, and the sap vacuole, which provides storage and shape for the cell. The next thing is being able to draw them. So the slide here I've got here shows the animal cell ready. What you need to be able to try and do is draw a plant cell. So the animal cell is shown there for you. If you can try and draw a plant cell, pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, now looking at what we've learned from the specifications so far, This is the GCSE specification that we're getting ready for. So in September, when you start Lec B, we will be looking at the GCSE course. We'll be starting the GCSE course because we spread it over those 3 years. This is one of the first things you do in biology, and hopefully we get in a bit of a head start, a stepping stone into that. So if we look at the points that we've looked at, explain how the subcellular structures of prokaryotic cells are related to their function, including animal cells and plant cells. And it lists those organelles that we've looked at. We can do that now. We have hit 2 of the GCSE specification points. The red bits I've just marked out because that's something we'll look at either in my next set of lessons or when we get back to school in September. But the key thing at the moment is to look at the animal cells and the plant cells. So you can see from this specification, the next thing we're going to have a look at is going on and having a look at specialised cells. And that's what today's lesson is all about. So, specialised cells. A specialised cell is when a cell is adapted for a specific function. So we've looked at a general cell. Now hopefully you realise that cells are all slightly different. As you can see there are about 200 different types of specialised cells in humans. Luckily, we only need to learn about 3 of them. But we are going to have a look at those different cells now. So, just looking at what that actually means. So the word adapted. Now the word adapted means it's suitable for, or it's been developed to do a particular job. So a fish is adapted to swimming by being streamlined. So thinking of that way, it's been formed particularly for one thing. Specific means to do just one thing. And then function is another word for job. It's a word you need to be familiar with because it's used all of the time in the GCSE papers. What is the function of this organ? What is the function of this cell? So the function of the heart is to pump blood around the body. So when we are looking at specialised cells, we're really looking at those 2 points. How it's adapted to serve its function. What special bits has it got to help it do its job? Now, generally, a few examples here. There are red blood cells, specialised type of cell. Sperm cells, specialised type of cell. Motor neuron cells, there are nerve cells, specialised type of cell. Leaf cells, plant root hair cells, pollen cells, these are all specialised types of cells. And you can see in that slide, there's a range of different shapes. They don't look like the fried egg cell we've drawn or the rectangular cell that we've drawn so far. So we need to be familiar with this different type of cell. Now, the first cell we're going to have a look at today is the sperm cell. So we can see this does not look like the circular cell that looks a little bit like a fried egg that we've drawn so far. There are significant adaptations that we're going to have a look at. So, first of all, the sperm cell function. What is its job? Now, the sperm cell's function is to swim through the female reproductive system to get to the egg which is in the oviduct in the female reproductive system. And it has a number of different adaptations to help it do that job as efficiently as possible. Now, if we have a look at those cellular adaptations, the sperm cell has something called an acrosome, which is on its head. It has a streamlined shape. It has a large number of mitochondria. It has a tail, and it has a haploid nucleus. Now what I'd like you to do is pause the video, go back to the previous slide where you could see that sperm cell, or you can have a look at this document in the assignment and see if you can pick out how those adaptations help the cell. So on your piece of paper you could write down the acrosome, what it does. Streamlined shape, how it helps it. Large number of mitochondria, what are they for? And go on like that. Showing you on the next slide, the different things we're looking at. So first of all, the acrosome. I'll show you on the previous slide now. The acrosome is in this area here. And it's the tip of the head of the sperm, and it contains lots of enzymes. Those enzymes are there to break down the jelly coat and the cell membrane of the egg cell. So when the sperm swims towards the egg and it fuses with the egg cell, it breaks down the cellular membranes, and the nucleus of the sperm can fuse with the nucleus of the egg. So the key word there is trying to remember the word enzyme, to break down the jelly coat of the egg cell. The streamlined shape, if you look at sperm cells, they are supremely adapted to being very, very streamlined. Now that streamlined shape means the cell doesn't need to have huge amounts of energy to be able to swim. It can swim as efficiently as possible. Still needs a lot of energy, but because it's efficient, that energy is being used to help it swim towards the egg cell. Now, linking in with that, a sperm cell, if it needs energy, it needs that part of the cell that helps release energy, which is the mitochondria. So there are large numbers of mitochondria in sperm cells to release that energy for the sperm to swim towards the egg. A sperm cell has a tail. Now that tail allows it, by having a sideways movement, to be able to swim. And the last point, which is probably quite difficult to understand at the moment, is this term, a haploid nucleus. So inside a sperm cell, rather than having a full set of genetic information to make a new human, it only contains half of the genetic information. That means at fertilization, when it meets with the egg cell that also has a haploid nucleus, we have two half sets of genetic information, which when fused together will make a full set of genetic information for that new individual. So they are the 4 big points, sorry, there's 5 there, they're the 5 big points that we need to have in our heads when we're looking at the adaptations of sperm cell. Now in a GCSE paper, that could get you some high marks in an exam question. It might be 3-4 mark question. So you need to be able to state what the adaptation is and how it helps the cell do its job. That's what I've written down there nice and clearly and explicitly. Okay, the next one, the egg cell. Now this slide actually shows you sperm as well to give you an idea of the scale. Egg cells are significantly bigger than sperm cells. So you can see the sperm cells are the grey cells on the outside, and then the egg cell is the large blue cell, which has been stained to make it visible through the microscope. It wouldn't normally be that colour. Now, here's a diagram of one, and this actually does look a little bit more like our stereotypical animal cell. Picking out the points, the egg cell function is to be fertilised by the sperm cell, but then provide support and all of the nutrients needed to develop into a zygote, which will then develop into an embryo, which will then develop into a baby. So allowing for all of those developmental stages. Now, picking out the 4 adaptations that we need to talk about. The first thing is there are changes to the cell membrane after a sperm fuses with it. So something happens to the cell membrane after a sperm has fused with it. There's a nutrient-rich cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is full of nutrients. A jelly coat around the outside of the cell membrane. And again, a haploid nucleus. So like we did on the previous one, if you want to pause that and try and think as to how those different adaptations would help that cell to perform its job, to perform its function. Okay, looking at each one. So first of all, the changes to the cell membrane after a sperm has fused it. I've mentioned the haploid nucleus before. We want one sperm to fertilise one egg. So we have half the genetic information from the sperm and half the genetic information from the egg. If 2 sperm fertilise the same egg at the same time, that would be 1 half and another half and another half of genetic information. That would not result in a successful zygote developing. It would not work. So what happens is as soon as that first sperm has fertilised, has got through the cell membrane changes, so the enzymes in the acrosome of the sperm will no longer work. So only one sperm can fertilise the egg successfully. The membrane changes and then no more sperm can get through. As well as that, there's a nutrient-rich cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is full of nutrients, and this will allow for the cell to grow and divide and continue until it starts to get fed as it's developed further as a zygote. There is a jelly coat around the outside of the cell membrane. That's there to protect that cell, to make sure that it stays viable and stays alive for as long as possible. And again, it has a haploid nucleus, so half of the genetic information is from the egg, half of the genetic information is from the sperm. When it comes together, it's a full set of genetic information to develop into a zygote, an embryo, and then a baby. So, a couple of points. We've gone through animal and plant cell. We've now looked specifically at animal cells and how they're specialised to do particular jobs. And the two cells we've looked at are sperm cells and egg cells. You need to know the adaptations the sperm cell has and how those adaptations help the sperm cells function, and the same for the egg cell. The adaptations the egg cell has and how those adaptations help the egg cells function. In your activity on your assignment, there'll be some questions that go with that, and some diagrams that I want you to draw. As well as that, you are still working on your model cell. It might be some of you haven't started that yet because you've decided that you want to have a go at making an egg cell or a sperm cell or even tomorrow's cell, which is a ciliated epithelial cell. I would like those cells, the model cells, to be submitted with a photograph by Wednesday, so then I can put something together and show everyone what they look like on Thursday's lesson. So hopefully you'll get on with these activities, and I will be doing another video for you for Tuesday's lesson. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.